Paul George might be forced into retirement this offseason. When you look at the NBA Finals, it features two teams that Paul George once was on. Obviously, the Indiana Pacers. Paul George was never able to get past the Eastern Conference Finals, mainly because of LeBron James. And then you have the Oklahoma City Thunder, where he played on for 2 years. His first year, he played with Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony. That was an absolute disaster. And then the following year, he arguably had the best season of his career, which many people like myself believe that Paul George should have won MVP that second year on OKC. He definitely was an MVP candidate. He did ultimately not win MVP though. And when you look at Paul George, he just had the worst season of his career on the Philadelphia 76ers. There was huge expectations with Paul George and Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey this season. Those are three stars on one team. And obviously, Joel Embiid had injury problems. Paul George also had injury problems. And he just, there was no point in this season where Paul George even looked like a all-star. Damn sure didn't look like a superstar. And he didn't even look like an all-star. He actually looked like he should have been coming off the bench. Now, where does Paul George go from here, y'all? It's obvious that Philadelphia is going to look to trade him, but that's going to be hard to do because the Philadelphia 76ers just gave Paul George a full max contract, right? So he's owed well over $100 million. Let's look up Paul George's contract, y'all. Let's see exactly how much he's going to get paid by the 76ers. Let me look it up on Google real quick. Paul George contract. Holy shit, guys. Paul George signed a 4-year, $200 million contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. Holy shit. Guys, let's be honest, right? Who on God's green earth is going to take on that contract? Right? Who's going to want to trade for Paul George? There's only one scenario that I could think of, and that's Michael Porter Jr. I think that there's a huge possibility that you may see the Denver Nuggets trade Michael Porter Jr. for Paul George because Michael Porter Jr., he has not been consistent for the Denver Nuggets, especially when they need him the most in the playoffs. Now, we do have to give respect where it's due. Michael Porter Jr., he is younger than Paul George. He's 26 years old. He did have a shoulder injury in the playoffs. That was his excuse for not playing well. And let's see how much he averaged this season. I'm pretty sure he had a better regular season than Paul George did. Michael Porter Jr. averaged 18 points per game this season. So that's really no different from Paul George. Him and Paul George pretty much averaged the same. The only difference is Michael Porter Jr. is an NBA champion. He's 9 years younger than Paul George. And, I think you're better off just keeping Michael Porter Jr., to be honest, man. I think that, just look at history. How many teams has Paul George been on? He was on Indiana. He was on OKC. Then he was on the Clippers, right? Now he's on the Philadelphia 76ers. So he's been on 4 different teams, and he hasn't been able to even get to the finals on either one of those 4 teams. So I think that you're possibly going to see a scenario where if Paul George continues to play like shit, because I don't think anybody's going to trade for him. I don't think Denver's going to try to trade for him because, you'd be stupid to trade a 26-year-old Michael Porter Jr. for a 35-year-old Paul George that has a $200 million contract. You're pretty much just asking Nikola Jokic to request a trade. But with that being said, you're going to see a scenario where Paul George doesn't play good this season. If he ain't out here averaging 20 to 25 points, I ain't going to say 20. If he ain't averaging at least 25 points per game, and if him and Joel Embiid don't make the playoffs and make a big playoff push, I think what's going to happen is Philadelphia is going to just reach a buyout. They're going to end up, giving Paul George a buyout. And I think from there, his career is going to be over because he's shown that he's not a winner. He's not a winner. He's old, and it looks like Paul George isn't in his prime anymore, man. And Paul George is a great player, man. I'm not going to say Paul George was ever one of my favorite players, but I feel like Indiana Pacers Paul George was just a beast, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was an absolute. I still remember when he dunked on Birdman on the Miami Heat. That was incredible. But, you know, we're just, and when it's all said and done, man, we're going to put Paul George in the same category as a player like Tracy McGrady and, you know, Vince Carter. You know, he's a great scorer, but he's just not a winner. You know, his style of play, it just doesn't equate to, you know, winning. You know, it's sad that his two former teams are both in the finals and he's never gotten there. And some people could argue and say that, you know, those teams that's in the finals right now isn't as talented as the teams that Paul George played for. You know, Paul George has played with a guy like Kawhi Leonard. Paul George has played with Russell Westbrook. You know, Paul George has played with now Joel Embiid. You feel me? He's played with Carmelo Anthony. And he just wasn't able to get to the finals with either one of those guys, man. So don't be surprised if Paul George gets forced out of the league within the next 1 to 2 years. It could, like I said, it could happen this offseason. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Where do y'all see Paul George going from here, man? Do you see Paul George getting traded again with this awful contract? Or do y'all see him just getting bought out and just pretty much forced out of the league the same way John Wall was? Let me know in the comment section. It's your boy Wavy. I'm out.